Welcome to the TechConnect Podcast by the SoCal Tech Forum. I'm Chris Daden, and today I'm joined by Ben Schreiner, Head of AI and Modern Data Strategy at AWS North America. Ben works directly with executive teams to help them operationalize AI and compete in a landscape that's being completely rewritten. Today, we're unpacking what it really means to be competitive in the AI era and why Ben believes we are the last generation of managers to only manage people. Let's get into it. Good morning, Ben. Welcome to the TechConnect Podcast.
Good morning, Chris. Good to see you.
We've been working together for a few years. Had the pleasure of meeting you at the Los Angeles Summit. We were just reflecting on this last night when you were kind of moderating a fireside chat, and it's been a pleasure to know you since.
Likewise, I've learned a lot from you.
Thanks, man. So just for the benefit of our audience, can you just give a bit of your background for us, and let's use that to get started?
Sure, happy to. It's a twisting career, if you will. I started out in commercial lending before the internet was a thing, and got into IT after AOL went public, and switched into the IT services side of banking, and have been a big fan of technology ever since. And then 10 years at Dell and 6.5 now at AWS, and pivoted into AI a couple of years ago when I saw the same, Genesis transformation moment, if you will, with AI, and had to be a part of it.
So you've been in technology for better part of 25 years. What is different about the AI wave versus what came before?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of things. Number one, the pace of change right now is faster than certainly I've ever seen, and anybody I talk to who's been in technology, yourself included. Like the iterations that we're going, the flywheel is cranking at a speed that nobody's ever seen, which is awe-inspiring and at the same time overwhelming for some folks. And then the other thing that's different about this transformation than the ones prior is historically technology came out of either the research centers or government or and big organizations were the only ones who could afford the latest and greatest new things because they were uber expensive. And then it would take a while for it to trickle down to kind of everyone else. And AI and the consumerization of AI, and AI, you and I know, have been around for a really long time, but the consumerization is probably the difference that happened a couple of years ago, where it showed up on everybody's phone.
Yeah, put it in our pockets everywhere.
As a consumer app. And that changed the paradigm for adoption, where you had employees bringing AI into the office before corporate IT had provided it to the employee. And that put some CISOs on notice and caused some alarm, rightfully so. But that is probably another pivotal change where the adoption started out on the consumer side of things versus, in the office.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Who's buying AI in these organizations? You work a lot with companies of all sizes. There are technical buyers, there's business buyers. A lot of technology in your last 25 years was probably procured and purchased through the technical teams. How's that changing with AI?
Yeah, I'd say everybody has a need. And if there ever was a shadow IT moment, SaaS was probably the first time where business folks who have business problems started to get their credit card out and solve it because they were dissatisfied with their internal team's ability to deliver on time, on budget, and keep up with the pace of change. I think the pace of change is so high now that it's only doubled down on, people are putting their credit card in and getting the things that they think they need, which has created a governance issue for many companies. And so I feel for corporate IT in any organization because your ability to service the needs has only gotten harder because the demands and the expectations have gone way up. So everybody's buying is kind of the answer. And that creates opportunity and challenges in the same vein.
So everybody's buying. In a lot of ways, what I'm observing is everybody's creating.
Yes.
And how are you seeing your more sophisticated customers manage application like proliferation and creation in the organization?
I would say at this juncture, very few are managing it. In all honesty, and probably for where we are right now in history, that's probably okay. The reality is most companies are using AI because it's embedded in the software that they already use. Even your company, right, is baking AI into the products and services that they deliver. And most companies use at least this many softwares, and if not this many, and maybe we count on our toes next. But so AI is popping up all over inside an organization. And then you compound it with just providing a product like Claude to all the employees, or any other model that people can start to create with, and you're going to have this proliferation of innovation, which is exciting, right? Like that part I'm most excited about is people tapping into their creativity. Before we kicked off, we were talking with some of the crew about just people being able to do things that they couldn't do before. My wife developed a website, and she's been in marketing for a long time. And that is exciting, because I think if we can tap into human creativity and allow all of our employees to do more, that creates exciting things for not just the leadership team and what's possible, but also for our customers, who ultimately are the beneficiaries.
I think I'm an IT leader. I own, of course, the product and engineering development at Criteria, but I also am in charge of enterprise applications and IT. There is a natural compulsion to want to control the proliferation of this creation in the organization. But even I myself have to consciously reduce my effort of regulating a bit, because you need the innovation to grow. It's a totally new muscle for everybody in the organization. And the more you restrict that muscle, the slower it will grow, if it grows at all. And there's a lot of organizations who might accidentally stamp out the motivation and innovation that would come from trying different AI solutions in products that exist today, but also new tools that are net new for the organization. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, you said something really important, which is try. Like when a lot of folks maybe a year ago came out, they were like, I'm picking this model and this is what I'm going to go with. And what we're starting to see across the board is, on average, people who do this a lot use upwards of 3 models, because they're good at different things. And we at AWS have had the philosophy where it's never been about us creating the biggest, baddest model. It's been about, customer choice. I don't know what model is going to be best for your use case or anybody else's use case for that matter. But if we can provide choices and then give you a way to do those evaluations, then I think we create an opportunity for you to match the right model with the right problem. We think that's a superior approach, because ultimately these things all cost money, and you want to match the return on investment, and the size of the models differ, the capabilities differ, and are going to continue to differ over time. And so choice is important. I think your approach of encouraging innovation is super important. The other thing I'd say too is instead of thinking about control, it's thinking about visibility, right? And so allowing your people to innovate, but sharing what they're doing so that people can build on top of what's happening. And that's truly where I think the compounding effect happens. It's awesome, and I know you've had this experience where you did something, you have the wow moment. Right. But if your wow moment can trigger more wow moments for other people because you've shared that, and then they build on top of it, that's truly when the human potential, gets tapped into. And so I would encourage anyone in a leadership role to find ways, instead of thinking about control, to highlight what's being done, how to share so that you can compound the benefits, because you're going to get benefits. There's zero doubts to me that you'll get benefits. It's just your ability to compound them is what's going to be the difference maker.
I think that's a really great observation. The reason we're seeing kind of logarithmic growth or innovation when AI is applied right is because it compounds.
Yeah.
It's not only a efficiency tool that makes you dial a little bit faster in a linear way. You're compounding multiple actions together. You're taking complex workflows with agents, and you're able to deliver that compounding result. So I think that's a really good observation. I always tell people that when you're building an AI culture, you really know that you're starting to win if the kind of AI leaders can step back from something like a monthly office hours where everyone is learning about AI. When the leaders can step back and you get individual contributors across teams volunteering to show off what they've built,
done. Yeah.
Right? That's that moment for me where I tell organizations, chase as quickly as you can to that point where people that are not you as a leader are showing off what they've done with AI. And if you're a 200-person organization and you've got now 30, 40 evangelists, you're going to get to AI scale much faster, and you're going to have a way more sustainable AI culture.
Completely support that approach. I refer to that as like an AI champion that is an early adopter, and every company is going to have some folks on the distribution curve.
And you have to graduate past it.
You do.
You become dependent, right?
And the cool thing that I was just at a company in Michigan, and they had AI champions, and they were embedding those champions in different business functions to encourage the business folks. Because if we're super honest, the early adopters for AI typically are technical people, right? And you would expect that. It's the shiny new thing that everybody wants to play with. And it makes perfect and logical sense. But how do you have that permeate through the rest of the business, and embedding those AI champions in the business teams, in those meetings, listening for how AI, having an AI, like how could we do this with AI? Like any of the problems that surface is creating that permeation of adoption, right? And that's where you get that compounding effect where you have the one person turns into 4, turns into 8, and now you're cranking that flywheel up into a really momentum shifter for your business.
For those of our audience who may not know, the broader role of AWS in AI, what does your team actually do day to day with companies that you're working with?
I have the privilege of speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of executives throughout the year. My team focuses on truly trying to inspire those leaders to realize the situation that we have right now. This is a leadership moment where every company needs to decide how AI is going to impact the trajectory of their company, but also their people, right? And that is a leadership moment, and we challenge leaders to take a minute to think that through, and have a plan for how to bring their people along for the journey. But I'll say this, Chris, and in my conversations all last year and first quarter didn't disappoint either. I don't think anybody's thinking big enough about how AI can transform their particular industry or their company, and how they need to rethink how they do things and what's possible. And that's a different headspace for...
Are people thinking incrementally?
For the most part, right? For the most part, and it's human nature, right? You see the tool, you use the tool, I can get things done faster, right? But you're doing the same things, right? And that's...
Ooh, they're not rethinking their
correct,
approach.
Right? So this is, can AI save me time? Yes. Okay, but if you're still doing the same thing, you're just doing it faster, yeah, maybe you can do more of whatever that happens to be. But really challenging folks, I love that our user conference is called reInvent, perfectly named for this particular moment, which is you need to reinvent and rethink like how customer service is going to evolve. And this gets to the conversation we're having with many folks is your customers' expectations are changing right now. Like right now, because they have AI in their pocket, what they expect from a product and service provider is changing, and it's evolving rapidly. And so how are you tapping into that changing need? How are you understanding how your customers thinking about your products and services is evolving? And then how are you intaking that as feedback and then how you turning it into adaptation of your products and services to be able to meet that need. And we talk often about hyper personalization, right? So the expectations, we talked last night about our kids, right? Mine are a little bit older than yours, right? And my kids want what they want right now, right? And their idea of privacy is gone versus my generation, where we keep, our social security number very sacred, and all the information about us we try and protect. And if I look at my kids' generation, it's just like, no, I'll give you whatever you want if you give me what I want right now. And so it's a different paradigm, the different generations and how they view products and services, and those are the next buyers, right? And so I encourage all leaders to look at, how is the buying landscape changing? How are their needs changing? And then how are you creating a culture inside your organization to hear what it is that's changing and then be able to adapt to it? And these tools should, if used correctly, help you with that adaptation. But it's going to require a culture shift for many legacy, we'll call it. It's hard to say that anything longer than 2 years old is legacy, but quite frankly, everybody's legacy for the most part, unless you just hung your shingle out last year.
Right.
But that's the opportunity for everyone, is to how do I learn more about my customer, and then how do I do more for them so that I have a competitive advantage in the AI era.
Let's go down the path of AI readiness a bit.
Sure.
So you do a lot with organizations and their data strategy. You talk to them about organizing their data assets in a way that sets them up for success for AI. Are you observing that that's the biggest blocker to folks being able to leverage AI? I think my opinion is there's a part of AI that is adopting it in the organization, new skill sets. You can deliver things that aren't necessarily dependent on proprietary data. Yep. There's like AI enablement in the organization.
Sure.
And then maybe there's folks who are advancing their product with, like us, hiring models that's trained on proprietary data, and you kind of have to have your data house in order for that to be successful. So we got a little lucky. In 2022, we did a wholesale remake of our data warehouse end to end. We were then set up come 23, late 22, when we decided to begin using AI for product, AI use cases and also internal use cases. We kind of had our data house in order. Yeah. So without that, I think we would have been very challenged. So talk about AI readiness and data.
You did the hard work, right? If we look at, I mentioned this and this well, right? The Dunning-Kruger effect is alive and well, and others have called it the hype cycle and other categorizing of the phenomenon. But the hype cycle around what's possible with AI is real, and I believe what you're seeing on the first arc is people getting incremental benefit. Right? Out of the box, everybody can get benefit, right? But it's incremental. The reality is when you hit the trough of disillusionment is when you realize that you start asking more specific questions and you get vaguer answers, right? Because the models don't know your customers. They don't know your products. They don't know how your company does things. And that starts to be disappointing because the effectiveness starts to wane. And then adoption starts to wane, right? And so you get this valley of disillusionment. The reality is companies that are truly going to transform have to augment a off-the-shelf model with their data. And there's lots of ways to do that. But that is the difference maker between incremental and transformative results. The models just at the most simplest point are only as good as the data they have access to. If they don't have access to your data, then they have no way to leverage it. And if your data is not great, guess what? Then the answers the model gives isn't going to be great, and you shouldn't expect it to be.
Right.
And so that hard work, many organizations have put off because it's hard, and it's harder to maybe quantify the return on investment unless you're in highly regulated industry like banking, where I come from, we had to in order to satisfy laws, or healthcare where they have to. But most industries don't have that same rigor around their data, and that'll be an Achilles heel for transformation with AI for some of those companies, because they'll get benefit, but they won't get the big transformational step function change, because the reliability of their data just isn't there. And the worry I have is, how often would you ask a model questions and get bad answers? When do you stop asking? Like, when do you get frustrated enough to go, this isn't helping me anymore, so I'm going to stop using it? And then you see this drop in adoption because the people see it as now a waste of their time, because they're not getting valuable answers out of it. And I think that's where that dip happens.
One of the concerns I have is somebody who, let's say a mature enterprise organization that has, great data organization, even not the best, just enough to be dangerous with AI readiness.
Sure.
I want to get your advice on kind of the mid-market company.
Okay.
Who, let's just take like a 20, 30 location coffee chain or something like that, right? They have access to a lot of data and information that can help their business. They want to adopt AI to, access those growth levers. What's your advice to a mid-market company like that, who has not been, inherently a tech company organizing data? They're not the enterprise that has been, through the last digitization and data trends that we've been through, right? Like data warehouses, data lake housing, everything. We've been talking about that for the better part of 10 years, right?
At least.
And now the mid-market, in order to access real value in AI, has to kind of catch up a bit. What's the advice for that mid-market cohort?
So for most, where technology is not their core business, like the coffee shop, I would say, if you can see the potential, which is the first important thing, that the leadership realizes that they have data that could help them run their business better, right? And that's ultimately the only reason you should be doing any of this, is to improve the outcomes for your customers, or to help speed up the growth of your particular organization. For companies where technology is not their core competency, I would encourage them to partner, find a technology partner that has done this, that knows how to transform the data, how to leverage it, and can speed up or accelerate the outcomes that they're looking for. So the coffee shop needs to be able to articulate, this is what I want to be able to do, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, and this is the data I have available. And then partner with someone who's solved similar or problems like that. And we have tons of partners who have a competency in not only helping small and medium businesses be successful, but also leveraging AI. That's some of our competency training and validation that AWS does. So partnering is the fastest way to get from, I have an idea and I want to solve this problem, to having real solutions. Because the reality is the talent gap, like going and trying to hire a data scientist or somebody who's got this experience, is going to be harder for that coffee shop. And it's a role that doesn't fit with the rest of the whole company and how it's operated. And so augmenting with some outside help is the fastest way to get a solution.
Good advice. Let's transition into this concept of an intelligent organization. You're going to talk about that a bit with the Tech Forum today.
Yeah.
I thought one of your really great points was drawing a sharp line between a portfolio of kind of independent, discrete AI projects and being an intelligent organization. I think there are a lot of companies that are solving that specific challenge, maybe in isolation.
Yes.
Right? They're using different AI tools between departments. Maybe there's kind of shadow AI going on in the organization, and we're not getting that compounding effect that we talked about earlier. What does it look like when an organization can cross that line from these disparate projects and become what you call an intelligent organization?
Where we are right now is is expected, right? Every software company, as we talked about, is baking AI into their software. And so the proliferation of AI inside an organization is a byproduct of just software and how they consume things. But the reality is, and every leader that I talk to acknowledges, that there's a flow of information through your organization, right? The hiring process, there's recruits, there's jobs, there's enablement of the new hire before they're able to be productive. Like, there's a flow of information through every function, from sales to service to inventory to all the different functions inside a working organization. And the effectiveness and efficiency of the flow of that information directly correlates to how effective and efficient the company runs. And I've yet to meet an executive team that thinks that the flow of information is optimal. We'll just leave it at that. Quite frankly, usually they use colorful words to describe, where data happens to sit and how inefficient sometimes the transition of information from one group to another happens to be. And so if you poke on that a little bit, that's your golden opportunity. The idea of the intelligent organization is meant to give executives a North Star. And so Jeff Bezos had some pretty strong visions for the company over the decades. And one of the things he did early on, as we were an e-commerce organization, is he said, data is a product. And so every group that is generating data needs to make it available to others. And that is a fundamental pivot in how you think about data. And so he thinks of producers and subscribers, and you may produce some data not realizing that it'll be valuable to some other department or some other downstream part of the value chain. And it's a reality, right? And so our view has always been to create data, treat data as a product, make it available. And so if you do that, you can then layer intelligence on top and now start to see the whole picture and not just pieces of a picture. If you think of a puzzle that you put together, you have these little pieces and it's colorful. You have no idea what the picture is. But you have no idea how it all comes together unless you look at the cover of the box, right? And so your ability to kind of put the pieces together is really kind of the panacea that I try and paint for that intelligent organization. And I'll say this, most of your listeners hopefully are Amazon customers. And I often will ask, and I think you are an Amazon customer as well, if I'm not mistaken. Have you ever noticed the shot clock that shows up on some products where it's like, if you buy this in the next 2 hours, you'll get it tomorrow? Yep. You've seen that? Most of our customers take that shot clock for granted, right? They're just like, and they're like, they make their choice as whether they buy it or not. But I ask folks to take a second and go, do you have any idea how many things have to happen correctly for us to make that promise to you, that we can get it to your front door in the time that we've promised you? And so we call that our promise, or we call it, actually technically it's fulfilled to promise. So it's in a warehouse somewhere, and we've calculated how long it's going to take us to get it to your front door. And then we track, because it's an important metric for us, is how frequently, like what is our fulfill promise rate, right? Like how often are we successful? And we hold that standard very high for ourselves. And the reality is we have to know where everything is, all the steps that it's going to take in order to make that calculation. And so we have that data as a product, mental model, and then a layer of intelligence that's making all those calculations that ultimately ends up in a user experience that says, oh, if you click the button now, you have it tomorrow morning.
And it changes the behavior of my purchases.
This was the intended consequence, right?
Sure.
Which is to say, hey, like, if this is important to you, which it is, it turns out, very important to our customers, is choice, speed, and ultimately the price with which we offer things. And if we can get that right, Jeff was famous for saying that these are, durable needs, right? No matter how much selection we give our customers, they will always want more selection, not less. No matter what price it's offered at, there's never a customer that doesn't want it for less. And no matter how fast we deliver it, there are very few customers that'll say, "No, I can wait, a little while longer." So we have a relentless pursuit of those three things because we know that those are three core parts of the value proposition in our relationship with our customers.
Fantastic. Let's switch gears a bit into how you're seeing, like, I'm a big fan of how skills are changing, the new workforce.
Sure.
We call it Work 4.0.
I love that.
And I want to get your take on how skills are changing even in your immediate team, and maybe even more broadly, any philosophy that Amazon might have on skills, and get your take on how the workforce is evolving at your work at Amazon.
Sure. So our friends at World Economic Forum, I know you're at Davos recently, they did a jobs report last year that I think still holds very true. And in that jobs analysis, there's a chart deep in the research that talks about the skills needed in 2030, which isn't long from now. And as expected, the top right quadrant, the skills that are going to be in demand are very human skills. They're critical thinking, leadership, continuous learning, like that adaptability really ring true. And then the skills that are going to be less in demand are the things that actually AI can automate and some of the tasks that we're not going to need to do as humans. So it makes sense as we have AI doing tasks for us that we're going to value in the future the more human aspects of the job, or the things that make us uniquely different and valuable, creativity being one of those important ones. Inside of how work is evolving for our teams, we mentioned it last night at dinner, like finding areas where AI can be applied to parts of the job that the humans don't like, right? And I talked to lots of people, and I know this to be true, that almost every person has a part or percentage of their job that isn't their favorite, right? Whether it's administrative work or whatever it happens to be. In my particular team, very specifically, we talk to executives, and that is what they enjoy the most, is the human interaction, the inspiration that they provide, the partnership that gets created, the energy, that, like, all of that is what they're really good at and what adds the most value. The part of their job that they don't like the most is going back and entering into our CRM system the fact that they met with these 20 executives and what they talked about and so forth. So the reality is, which I knew, is that my team will enter things in, but they'll enter it in for 2 people, not the 20 that they met, right? Because that clicking around and the time consuming is not really intellectually stimulating. And if it's not in Salesforce, I can't see the full impact that they had. And so I knew that we were understating the amount of executives that we were influencing. And I knew that this wasn't a part of their job that was their favorite. So I worked on an agent that would allow them, it would interview them, say, who did you meet with? What did you talk about? Who all did you talk with at the company? Then it would go to the CRM system and look to see, do we have contacts for those? If we didn't have a contact for Chris, it'll ask, what's his name, what's his role, phone number, and so on. And it would create the contact. And then it would say, I will replicate your meeting with all those people, significantly reducing the data entry load and the intellectual lack of stimulation that was creating. And so my team will say that it saved them at least a day a month. So 1, save time. 2, the accuracy has gone way up because now we're getting the full picture of their engagement. And 3, and probably the most important to me as a leader, is I've had people on the team say that their quality of life has gone up, right? They enjoy their job before, but they enjoy it more because we've freed up that time to spend with customers, which is what they enjoy the most. So that's the win for me as a leader, is finding opportunities like that to make a difference for your people, and to leverage this technology to truly make the human condition a better one.
If you were to hire or add someone to your team with all that you've learned and your leadership around AI, does it change how you hire that person?
So Amazon's got some leadership principles that are pretty core to to who we hire, and you're very familiar. And so I don't know that it's changed, too much. I'll say this: like, learn and be curious is a critical one. Thinking big is a critical one that I look for in who, the kind of persona that I'm looking to bring onto the team, and then like ultimately it's that adaptability. So the learn and be curious is always something like I believe that you should always be a lifelong learner. And so we'll often ask in the interview process, what are you learning right now? And how do you learn? So I think you know this too, right? Everybody has a different mode of learning. Some people like a lecture, some people watch YouTube, some people, have to get their hands dirty and just, play with it. But I want to learn, from you. How do you learn? What are you learning? Because that tells me a lot about how a person's wired, and whether or not they're going to fit into the team. I've got a great team of just very diverse thinking. That's the other thing that's important to me, is I want people with a varied background. One of the guys on the team who is coming on his 20-year Amazon anniversary in a month, which is just amazing. And he's seen things and knows things, and he'll tell you, like, his ability to adapt to the changing needs of the market is probably his biggest superpower, right? Which is just, what do I need to learn in order to continue to be successful? But ultimately, he looks at it, as do I, is how do I continue to grow, right? As a human being, and how do I have more impact to our customers? Because that's what gives him value and joy, is when the customer interactions are valuable, and he wants to always be adding more value.
I've had the pleasure of doing some of your AWS-led workshops, like Thinking Backwards and other things. It is clear that the leadership principles you've described for Amazon are Work 4.0 compatible.
Yeah.
Right? They're everything you've just described, resilience, thinking big, like those are all key components to what I know is going to make an individual successful in Work 4.0. So that's fantastic. When you work with customers who maybe don't have that clarity,
yeah,
I know that you have workshops around, the leadership principles, and you're sharing a lot of that with customers. What are the gaps that you're seeing when customers come to you and say, I want to be Work 4.0, kind of future-proof. Amazon's got these leadership principles. How can I absorb some of that through osmosis in my organization? What's some guidance for that?
No, I appreciate it. And we will share what works for us, right? Happily, we think it's a way to just add value to anyone who will listen. But mileage varies, right? And we encourage people to take what you think will be valuable for your organization, your culture. But we started at the beginning of this podcast with this is a big leadership moment, right? And so the leaders around the table trying to decide what kind of company they want to be in the AI era have to realize that their people, like the change in the people and the cultures, is going to be the hardest bit. The tech is the easy bit. So creating a culture where you're encouraging people to learn. Not every culture has time for people to learn. That's set aside. Or creating the opportunities for them to have a lunch and learn, where pizza gets brought in and you have somebody who's smart come in and share some best practices of how they're doing, and to inspire others to be curious, right? I think too, for folks to really get the benefits of AI in a transformational way, they're actually going to have to move the goalpost, right? So right now, most folks are getting some benefit where AI is saving time, but they haven't changed the expectations for their team. And so when you move the goalpost and you go, oh, you're a developer, and I expect you to do X number of features a month, great, right? There's metrics there. Well, when you give them tools like AI and agents, you have to change the expectations, right? And so now it's not 10 features, it's 100, right? And that moment is going to be a tough one, because us as humans, even though we have the tools, are going to have an allergic reaction to the goalpost being moved. That's a human reaction to leadership thinking I now can 10x my output. And and maybe you don't know how to do that yet, right? That's that growth moment. But we're at the cusp of people starting to move the goalpost and seeing whether or not their teams can step up to the challenge with these new tools. And that's actually where we are, I would say, right now, because the folks are measuring time savings, which is probably the easy thing. It used to take me X and now it takes me Y, and it's compressed time. But most organizations aren't measuring the reinvestment of that time. What did you do? I don't want you playing video games for the 2 days that you saved. I want you delivering more features, talking to more customers, whatever that happens to be. And that's the shift. We're right there now, I would say. And it's, for some, it's going to be harder than for others, depending on their culture. But it's a leadership challenge to manage that evolution, I'll say.
So let's dive into that leadership challenge a little bit. You and I subscribe to a similar philosophy that the technology in this evolution of change is the easier part.
Without a doubt.
The harder part is that culture change, that leadership moment that you talked about earlier. My question to you is, have you seen AI sustainability and culture proliferate best from a top-down approach, from a bottom-up approach, a combination of both? Talk to me about how you see that being successful. And then I want to sprinkle on a little bit about, there are companies that are AI native.
Yes.
That have the advantage, the advantage
yeah.
to start from scratch right now and redesign. And they're, of course, still prone to the same, scratch and rebuilds that others are as the technology moves so fast. Like you said, 2 years is
a long time
legacy now.
Yeah,
right?
It's crazy to think, but it's true.
Amazing. And they're still prone to that. But AI native definitely has some advantage. And then companies like mine, who have been around for 20 years, were making this transition to being AI first.
Yes.
And I just want you to sprinkle some of that in. So while you're building culture, are you seeing it best top-down, bottom-up, hybrid? And are you seeing that differently from AI native versus legacy companies becoming AI first?
So if we're talking to leaders, I think they need to lead with some empathy, that there is a lot of fear in the workforce about what AI could do to disrupt their ability to provide for their families. Like, fear is real and it needs to be acknowledged. But as a leadership team, it's one thing to acknowledge it. It's another thing to have a plan on how best to address it. So how are you going to enable and create an environment where people can develop these skills so they can add more value and be able to add more value to your company, but also to their career trajectory and their own personal growth. So it's super important to me that leaders acknowledge the fear and provide a way to address that for their people. That adjustment is super important from an enablement point of view, to create a workforce that can then deliver the transformation you're trying to make. Because ultimately, again, if you're not AI native, which 95% of the companies out there aren't, then you have a modernization opportunity, right? And that may be harder for some than others. But the reality is these tools are making it even easier to rewrite things. There are still companies out there, believe it or not, with mainframes. And it's like, why? Why is that still a thing? And it's because that modernization has historically been cost prohibitive. Like, it's painful to rewrite something, have no new features. It's just now not on this old platform anymore. And so people have put that off because the return on investment of that time and that investment just wasn't there. Now the ability to automate a lot of that stuff is made it feasible to solve some of those old legacy problems that were cost prohibitive. And so it's pretty euphoric, I think, for many of those technology leaders to go, hey, I can now address some of those things that I know deep down were a risk that was just always going to be there. I just couldn't address it because of the cost prohibitive nature of it. So I think it's a balancing act. I think you need to have a portfolio approach. You're going to have some some incremental needs, and then some midterm needs and some long-term needs. And if you have a portfolio where you can show some progress to some things while building that data foundation that's ultimately really critical to transforming your business, you can provide a methodology to developing the confidence inside the organization that we can do this. It's a logical path, and you can learn as you go. Everybody will make mistakes. It's part of learning, but we encourage people to have that mentality of adapting. I think many grew up as I did, where you bought some software and it was good for a good long while, and maybe you customized it along the way. And now the mental model has to be, you're dating a model, right? Like you're not committing to a long-term relationship with the model because there's going to be a new one, right? And you may want to swap it out, and lots of people are swapping out for the latest and greatest. So you have to think about how you're going to swap things out and build differently in this new era.
You talk about the understandable workforce fear as it relates to AI.
Yes.
And that we have to be empathetic. There is a element of psychological safety for AI experimentation.
Yes.
What have you seen working in that regard? How do you create that safe space for AI experimentation?
Yeah, it's important that leaders realize that if you're going to innovate, truly innovate, you are going to make mistakes, and your ability to recognize that fast and create that psychological safety. Far too often, failure was, detrimental to career development, and those two things are opposites, right? If I'm afraid, I'm not going to take the risk, and therefore you're not going to get the innovation or the level of innovation that's possible. And so if innovation is important to the longevity, which I would argue it absolutely is, of any company for that matter, then you have to create a place where stopping something is a good thing, right? Realizing that this is not going to work should be celebrated, but it also should be one where we learn from why, right? Like, why is this not a good thing? So that the entire organization, or more than just the team, benefits from hey, this is a pattern, and we stopped it, so that you can free up time to go do the next thing, because there will be a next thing. And that creates the psychological safety, right? If you're like, all right, we stopped this project.
And that's the end.
Yeah, right. It shouldn't be the end, right? There's another thing, right? And that is, I think, what leaders can reinforce is like, hey, if this stops, there will be another project, right? It doesn't mean the end of your employment because we've decided not to continue with this particular thing. And that again it will be new for many, but I think an important part of creating that psychological safety that is going to be absolutely critical for folks.
Good advice. We've talked about how the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report says that core skills in 2030, again, not far away, are a blend of AI and human capabilities. And one thing that you've said that I really subscribe to is we are the last generation of managers to only manage people.
Yeah. That raises an eyebrow for lots of folks.
Hey, I'm with you on it. I think within the next 3 to 5 years, AI agents are going to be working alongside us. How should a leader start preparing for that today?
So we have a vision where AI agents are going to do things for us, augment us. And as a manager, you're still going to need to validate that the agent is doing what it is it's set out to do, just like you would with a junior employee. And if it starts to not do what you need it to do, which happens, you're going to need the ability to pull the agent aside and retrain or coach, just like you would an employee, right? Like, honestly, the parallels are identical. But the reality is we at Amazon are trying to anticipate the needs of the future manager and go, okay, you're going to need a way to evaluate different agents. You're going to need a way to monitor their performance. You're going to need a way to pull them aside and do the retraining or the recalibration so that it gets back into the swim lane that you want. Those are all things that we can anticipate being needs that we're trying to bake into our products and services to make it easier for the leaders to do just that. And so, yes, I fundamentally believe you're going to outsource certain tasks to agents, but you're still going to need ownership that stuff is getting done. It's still part of your business process, and you're going to need people to do those evaluations to make sure that you're still delivering the value that was intended. And I think those that have been playing with agents for a while will know that if you look at the results, sometimes it's not as expected, right? And it requires this iterative process, but it is akin to a new hire and them learning and ramping up to how you do things and what the expected outcomes are. And so I see it as a huge opportunity for managers and even individual contributors, right? So it's not just a managerial thing. Like, I think we're all going to have personal assistants that do stuff on our behalf, and you're gonna want to be able to teach it, like how and what you like, right? To make it tailored to your voice and how you like to work and so on.
I think I want to take a moment to just emphasize that a core thread across what you and I just talked about is there's no advocacy for complete AI autonomy without human in the loop. No. Right? It's really important. So even though our comments may raise eyebrows sometimes, it's really critical to note that every system we're designing is human at the center.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
It's the human augmentation, right? Like, the work needs to get done. We want to do it in the most effective, efficient manner possible. But at the end of the day, it's our critical thinking. It's our critical our creativity that's leading to what problems are we going to solve. I say this all the time, that if you solve one problem with an AI agent, great. Trust. I mean, I've been doing this a while. There will be more problems that need to be solved, right? And so, having that mental, fortitude to go, okay, like I don't need to do this anymore. I can now move on to the next thing that needs to be done. And that should provide a flywheel for the organization to continue to, become more effective, more efficient, and again, ultimately grow faster than we could if we just had to hire more people to do all the things, right? Like, at the end of the day, that becomes the limiter for many companies historically is the cost, time, and effort required. And now, if you can augment with these agents that can scale, you can scale faster than you could if it was just a hiring equation.
There's a really big opportunity to make AI really human. And I think one thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is, at Criteria, we have a feature in our platform that after you get hired, we're leveraging all of that pre-hired data we have about you, your, cognitive abilities, your strengths, your weaknesses, your personality fit, how your personality, represents in the team that you're joining.
Sure.
And I think a lot about that. We've been designing for human-to-human interactions. We have something called Workplace Insights. So before you have a meeting with Joe, you can really get to know what is a better way of communicating to Joe.
Sure.
What are questions you can ask in a one-on-one to, make that interaction better. And I think more and more, all of that data provided contextually to an AI so that the AI knows how to interact with Joe, just like another human would, right, is going to make that experience that much more humanistic.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on gets to the relationship between the human and the tools, right, or the agents that are at their disposal. And there's a trust that needs to be established, no different than when two humans, meet each other. You need to establish that trust and some validation. And so anything we can do to reduce the barrier to creating that trust and that relationship is a good thing, because it's going to allow for faster adoption and a better or faster, benefit. So I think that kind of work is well-founded and will be valuable over time.
That's awesome. Well, let's switch gears into kind of our takeaways.
Sure.
We've had a great discussion so far today. I'd love to close with some actionable advice I want to talk about your mantra a bit so that people can get a rounding feeling of what it's like to work with you. So first question, a SoCal Tech Forum, maybe startup founder, has limited budget and a small team. Where should they place their first AI bet?
Yeah, I think every founder and leader should just start using the tools themselves, right? If they're not already, I'd be shocked if anybody in the room that we're about to go in isn't using AI themselves. And having that personal experience, that aha moment, and then create a culture around that, right? That AI first culture is an important one, and that safe space to innovate. But I would also say too, is you don't have to do this alone, right? And so as a founder, you've got great ideas and you can go it alone, but if you find partners that can help accelerate your vision, that's a way to get out in the market and seize the moment. So, so advice is, make sure you're using the tools, create the culture, and then partner wisely with folks who've maybe done this before and can help accelerate your vision.
Fantastic. Today, you're going to close your talk with a slogan of think bigger, start small, and scale fast. What's one thing you wish every executive would do Monday morning after hearing that today?
I hope some of the folks in the audience will have a meeting Monday and challenge their entire leadership team to think bigger. And so I know we have a bunch of entrepreneurs who have big ideas, but in my experience, they really need to challenge themselves about reinventing the future. And that is the biggest opportunity that every leadership team has right now is inventing the future and thinking about it in a new and different way. That will create the competitive advantage, and I think ultimately lead to, more success for them, and more, value for their end customer.
Ben, I can't thank you enough for joining us here in SoCal today. The group is absolutely excited to hear from you. We have a little bit over 1,000 members now. The Tech Forum has grown thanks to great speakers like you volunteering to join us and talk about what makes the world great in technology. So thanks again. I mean it.
Yeah, happy to be here, and it's an amazing time to be in technology and to be a leader, and I think we all just need to seize the moment.
This podcast is brought to you by Human Studio. Human Studio is an award-winning design studio specializing in web design, branding design, video production, and so much more. We'd love to help you take your brand to the next level.
Thank you for listening to the TechConnect Podcast. Don't forget to stay connected and explore more at www.socaltechforum.org. We'll see you next time.